Hello everyone, welcome to Shua Cycles. Today we're talking about my weekend I spent at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. This is a bit different style of content than what I normally would make, but it's my video, so here we are. Growing up, I learned about NASCAR from a very young age. I have memories of watching NASCAR races around 2004, when the cars still kind of looked like toys more than they did actual stock cars. The joy of NASCAR for me has always been the strategy that exists both in the pits and on the racetrack. The NASCAR Cup Series has superhumans that pilot death machines around racetracks in search of hoisting a cup above their head at the end of the day. The biggest difference in stock car racing versus all other forms like F1 and IMSA is that these are full-bodied cars, and the rules here are usually safe for the pits and after the race. Kurt Busch moving Matt Kenseth and Dale Jarrett to get a win at Bristol, totally legitimate. Denny Hamlin wrecking Kyle Larson on the last lap, frowned upon, but as long as these wrecks aren't intentional, they usually get brushed aside. My father grew up watching racing at our local short track, Beach Ridge Motor Speedway in Scarborough, Maine. The track went out of business a few years ago, and now it sits to rot like most of these homegrown short tracks nowadays. After not seeing good racing in a long time, this year I surprised him and bought us both tickets to spend the weekend at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, catching the Xfinity Series, Wheel and Modifieds, and the NASCAR Cup Series. We had planned for weeks, which is one of those things that really helps you more in practice and not during the actual event. Saturday morning we set out towards the racetrack. It was a peaceful, fun ride through the New Hampshire countryside. The racetrack is out in the middle of Loudon. When we finally came across it, it was literally awe-inspiring. The stadium was so large it surprised me being familiar with such a small track like Beach Ridge. We parked our truck, admired the tractor trailers in the parking lot, and then made our way over to get into the track. I wanted to poke around and buy some merch. And as we were walking back from the concession stand, we heard a noise. The rumbling of the engines. My dad took off, while I took a second to put on my earmuffs and then caught up. We walked underneath the stands, close to the start-finish line out towards the track. And as we did, 3 cars went barreling past us, one by one. They were moving so fast we had a hard time telling who it was until seconds after they had passed. It was almost like, oh, that was Ross Chastain. Oh, Kyle Busch. Oh, Chase Elliott. My dad put it in words very well, calling it violent, which is exactly what it felt like. With some snacks and drinks in hand, we headed to take our seats. We watched a bit of qualifying and practicing, seeing the big boys play around and get a feel for their cars. Then we decided to take a break and go back to the truck for a bit. Around 3 o'clock, the Xfinity boys came out, and to be honest, not to spoil this video, but I think this race was the pick of the weekend. The young kids put on such a great show, and the race really was anybody's up until the end. But John Hunter Nemechek bagged the race and looked dominant doing it. There was one restart where Nemechek seemed to hang back and made the field bunch up, causing an accident. The biggest one we saw all weekend. But to be honest, like the Hail Melon and the Pass in the Grass, NASCAR was built on pushing the limits. And until the sanctioning body puts a rule in place, I say let them race. One of the best parts about this weekend was the race scanner I had with me. They rent these out at the track, and man, I will never go to another race without one. It was so entertaining to hear the pit strategy and know what was going on with what car. Right off the bat, we knew that Ross Chastain had issues with his steering. We could tell when the wheel and race was going to be called for rain, and we knew that Justin Allgaier got penalized before we even saw him move to the back of the field. I highly suggest renting one whenever you go to the racetrack. The wheel and race kicked off, and every crew chief was telling their drivers that they were going to be racing to the rain. It was expected to come in around 50 laps. With dark clouds moving in, around lap 60 the rain droplets began to fall and NASCAR threw the yellow flag and parked the cars. We moved under the bleachers and waited, but inevitably we decided to go get our hotel. We'd come back the next day. All in all, my first day at a NASCAR track blew me away. At our hotel we ran into some crew members of one of the Xfinity drivers. We had to drive 40 minutes away from the track, so it seemed unlikely, but NASCAR was in town, so I suppose it only made sense. Sunday did not turn out to be the sparkling day I was hoping it to be. Torrential rain and washouts all over New Hampshire. The morning of Sunday, I woke up and went for a walk. Just checking out the scenery around us, nothing special. Coolest thing was the airport was close, so I could hear plenty of planes flying about. Why does that feel so fitting? That you have O'Reilly's, you have Joseph's Equipment, which looks like it's kind of like a gallery of a bunch of old equipment.
And then you have CrossFit. Need I say any more? And you have a poor old Fuji back there that's getting suffocated by a vine. That's life.
I went back up to the hotel room after this and began watching the Xfinity race from the day before, and while I was watching it, I got an alert on my phone for severe weather and possible flooding. I kind of just brushed it off, but 4 hours later when we packed up and left, the road I had been walking on earlier had begun to wash out and chunks of the pavement were ripped up and moved.
Getting ready to leave this beauty. The Super 8 Motel, Manchester. It smells like pee. But it was a nice bed to sleep in at least. The bed didn't smell like pee, so that was my only requirement.
While waiting, we went to a military weapons museum in Hooksett and went out for lunch, where we finally got the message from the racetrack that the race had been postponed till Monday. So we ate and then retreated back to Maine to get some sleep.
Alright, here in Hooksett. There's Merchant's Auto. It's Hooksett, New Hampshire. There's a hook and then you set it. And we just got word that the Cup Series race has been postponed till tomorrow. Yay! So we're actually going to go home tonight and come back tomorrow for the Cup Series race. It's going to be epic.
The drive back up to New Hampshire on Monday was exciting. The thought of seeing the Cup Series after the barn burner races we had seen on Saturday had my stomach in knots. We arrived at the track with about 2 hours to spare, bought some more merch, and got prepped for the race. To anybody who has never been to New Hampshire Motor Speedway, I would highly suggest investing in a soft side cooler and bringing as much water as possible. This is possibly true for most racetracks, but it is very, very, very true for New Hampshire. The day we went, it was 90 degrees, and the sun was out full force, meaning if you're not drinking plenty of water, you're going to get heat stroke rather quick. About every 20 minutes or so, I would reach into the bag, grab sunscreen, put it on, and then drink about half my water bottle, just trying to keep myself hydrated and not burn. The Cup Series race was rather intense, with a lot of people fighting for position. But we all know who the fastest car was. Eric Jones, Kyle Busch, Noah Gragson, and Eric Almirola all had car troubles at one point or another, with Eric Jones having some form of transmission issue. Most of the fastest cars, like Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, and Eric Almirola, worked their way out of contention for the win. But not in Martin Truex Jr. Martin started and finished very, very strong, looking like a solid contender for this year's champion for the Cup. Ross Chastain, Chase Elliott, and Bubba Wallace were making a lot of moves, but did not have the speed or consistency to hold up on their position. If you've always watched NASCAR on TV and never been in person, find one of your local tracks. I promise you, you won't regret going. You gotta see these guys perform live. Just the intensity is incredible. And who knows, catching the Xfinity Series race, you might just see one of tomorrow's superstars. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate everyone's support. The planning for this event has caused me to fall behind on some other content, but now that it's finally done, I should be able to focus more on making videos. So that's nice.
Because something tells me this is Highway Environmental Protection Division. There's a waste street in the plant back there. And it smells gross.